Well, hello there. Tom Green coming back at you with some Fireworks CS5 goodness, and today's goodness revolves around the relationship of Fireworks and Flash Catalyst. I think you're about to discover that those two make a real dynamic duo. Now, the roots of this project, and you can see one of the pages from it for Tanzania, actually don't start with me. They start with one of the Adobe evangelists, Paul Tranny. One of the things I love about doing what I do is that I really have developed some very close working relationships with the Adobe evangelists. And they sort of ask me questions, I ask them questions, and we bounce ideas off of each other and go our merry ways. But, we sometimes look at each other as essentially doing the same thing. So Paul was doing this presentation on taking Catalyst presentation into air and then converting it into mobile uses and things like that. So he sent me the files, and he said, "What do you think?" And I looked at it, and I said, "So where's Fireworks?" And he said, "But I did it in Illustrator." And I said, "But you could just as easily do it in Fireworks." And he said, "You know something, Tom? Never even thought of it." So I asked him if I could use the assets and do this presentation or do this podcast. And he said, "Sure." So here we are. So thank you, Paul Tranny. So Paul sent me the files, and as I said, it was set up in Illustrator. And if you take a look at it in the artboards, not in the artboards, but in the layers, this is a pretty complex document. It's broken into sections. And if you turn off the visit, there's wildlife. And if you turn off wildlife, there's culture. And if you turn off culture, there's the home, and then there's another home page. Now, here's one of the things that I saw happening with this, is that what I want all of you to be very clear on is I'm not ragging on Paul. I truly am not. There are 9,000 ways to doing everything in the digital studio, and this is one of them. And the bottom line here is that Paul got this presentation to work in Catalyst. I said, well, I could do the same thing in Fireworks. Who's got the better idea? Actually, neither of us, because the bottom line is, does it work in Catalyst? I'm going to take this presentation from Illustrator. I'm just going to use the assets and the design, reproduce it in Fireworks, and then get it over to Catalyst. Now, this is going to be a two-parter. This part here will explain the process of creating the file in Fireworks and then getting it ready for export over to Catalyst. And then the next part will be actually the export into Catalyst and a couple of things that I did in the application. Let's get going. So I've got this very busy Illustrator file, which I kept open for reference, but I did not really bother with any of the assets, other than to ask them certain questions and to take a look at the final Catalyst file. And it turns out that, sure enough, this image here is a video. This is just a screenshot placeholder. And if I turn off culture, this is a screenshot placeholder too. So I've got to work in video into the final Catalyst presentation. So the first thing I did was get the page dimensions, and this is 1000 by 600. So that I knew that I'm dealing with an artboard that's fairly big. So over to Fireworks I go, and the first thing I did was I just created a brand new document, file new, and just set the dimensions to 1000 by 600, just like that. Chose a background color of black because that was the color that Paul used, and I'm ready to rock and roll. Now when the page is opened, I realized that this text here, and this text here, and here, and this flag, and this stuff here, was actually common to every page. These are probably language buttons. They aren't terribly active for the purposes of this, so I'm just going to leave them here on a master page. But I would not put objects that will be converted to buttons in Catalyst on a master page. I'll get into that in a second. So anyway, I got this all set up on a master page, but I wanted to be really clear that this was going to appear on all the pages, and also I had to identify areas where the text was going to appear and where images would appear. So the text would appear in this area over here, and the images would appear in here. Now, when I open this up in Catalyst, this is going to come in, and I'm going to lay in a video into here that Paul used. So the next page I created was the master page, and the master page was, again, I just used a placeholder image, just placed it, and put it on the page. I've got this white box over it, and then the text in here. I should point out one of the really cool things that happened to me, and it involved the flag. Paul has a Tanzania flag, and if I import it, there it is there. There's the flag PNG. And if I open it, I get the little PNG import dialog box here. So if it's a multi-page PNG image, I can see which pages I want to bring in. Well, it's this one. So I'll just click open. And then I just drop it in, and there's the flag. And I quickly realized, this is seriously bigger than what Paul was using. So I went over, found out that the dimensions of this were 58 by 39. Now there is a little feature in Fireworks that I just adore. And this was scaled in proportion, so I want to have this scale in proportion. So it comes in 600 by 400, and all I have to do is come to the Properties panel here, make sure that that little dot is selected so that these two values are linked, and all I have to do is just type in the value for the width, and if I do that, it also scales to the height of 58 by 39. Very quickly done. Don't have to do it by eyeball. If I have the numbers, fabulous. The font, by the way, that's being used is Minion Standard. Minion Standard, you're going to find, gave me a bit of a trouble in Catalyst. Nothing major, just couldn't figure out what it was. I'll show you how I dealt with it. It didn't change the font, it just forgot the family. Go figure. So I set this up, and on the home page, you'll notice that I've got Home, Culture, and Wildlife. These are the buttons that are going to navigate between the pages. And I've got a little triangle here that will actually identify the page that I'm at. Now, I only need these buttons on the three pages. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put them here on the home page, convert them to buttons in Catalyst, and then put them into position in Catalyst. So I see where, it's located here and on the y-axis, so I can, quickly figure out where it's going to go in the other two pages. The culture page, this font here is Arial. This one here is the Orator. And again, I got another placeholder. And then the wildlife page was really quite interesting. He has an image of giraffes in there, which I thought was really kind of cool. And tried to find the giraffes image, but no place to find it until I discovered that this is a cropped image. So I thought, wonder how I'm going to do this. Well, it really is not that hard to do. What I did was I imported the giraffes image. So we'll just bring in the giraffes. There they are. Open. And drop it in. And then I'm just going to put it into position right there. And I can see right here that with the guide, I've got my crop guides, and I'm not going to crop this because in Fireworks, if you crop an image, it crops the entire artboard. So you don't want to do that. So the first thing I did was I made sure that I was 0 on the x-axis. And then I came to the crop tool here, and there's an export area tool. I selected it, and if I click and drag right down to the crop mark there, what I can do is essentially export that selected area. And to do that, all I have to do is hit the return enter key. It opens the export dialog box. I can choose JPEG as my export format. Click export. I'm going to export the image. Okay, images only. And I'll call it Giraffes 05 because I got a bunch of them here. Export, and then I just brought the image back in. So that's kind of how I did that. Now the other issue, just going to take that out of there. The other issue was this text here. If I come over to the Illustrator document, you'll see what I'm talking about. If I open up the wildlife, you can see that there's overflow of the text. And when I saw the overflow of the text, I thought, oh my God, I'm going to need to scroll this, but there's no scroll component. Well, he actually built one. So I thought, well, okay, fine. If there's a scroll component here, then I'm going to build one in Fireworks, which is exactly what I did. Now, to build a scroll component in Fireworks is real simple. You just need a track, which is this black thing here, and a thumb. Those are the only two pieces you need. Other than that, the up and the down arrows are extraneous. And what you do in Catalyst is you turn this into a scrolling component, and then you just connect the text to the component, and this becomes active. Now, the really cool thing about this is this is a roll your own component. You can basically build your own. Fireworks does come in the with Flex components in the Common Library, and there's the scroll bar there. But the problem with the scroll bar, if I just pull it over here, is that it is a symbol. So it's got to be double-clicked, and as you can see, it opens, and then I've got to start pulling out the pieces, and I've got to do all kinds of crazy stuff with it to get at the track, to get at the thumb, and to get at the arrows. Much easier for me to actually just draw my own than it is for me to tear this apart and use it. Okay, I'm going to go back. There we go. And I'm just going to take the component out of here. So I'm ready to go. Now, the other thing that I wanted to do before I went over to Catalyst was make sure that everything has a name. So I've got a master page here. I've got a home page, got culture page, and a wildlife page, which I spelled wrong. So I've got a wildlife page. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually select each of my pages and go through the layers and make sure the names of everything on the layers make sense. I don't want to have anything that says text 1 or button 1 or anything like that. I want to make sure that I know exactly what everything is. Okay, so there's the wildlife culture home. Perfect. There's the pointer. I'm going to be using that quite a bit in the Catalyst presentation. There's the headline, A Place of History and Wildlife. There's the base that goes under the photograph, and then there's a thing here called Video Placeholder. And you'll see when I get over to Catalyst that I actually can replace this placeholder with a video. Okay, so I've got that done. So I'm going to go to the culture page, make sure that I got everything done properly here. Yeah, that's fine. And then over here to the wildlife page. Now, I did something a little bit different with the layers. I put the scroller in its own folder, so at least when it moves to Catalyst, it will move in its own folder, and I've got all the layers named. So I'm a happy camper. So how do I get this over to Catalyst? Well, the first step is File, Save As, and you save it as a ping image. So File, Save As, and I'm going to save it as Tanzania PNG. Now, I've already saved it, so there's no big deal there. In the next example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this image or this project, export out the FXG file over to Catalyst, open it in Catalyst, and then show you a couple of things that I did to make it work, and then show you it working in the browser. So I'll see you there.